So the hottest new trend in a small cap / penny stock land is crypto treasury stocks. If you are any kind of day trader in the last 2 or 3 months, you've probably seen some headlines of these. You've probably maybe even traded them. Why on earth is this happening? What is going on? What are some of the tickers you should be watching for? And kind of the backstory of how I think we got here and possibly what I think this trend ends up leading to. I want to talk about the kind of the origin of why this happened, right? Because again, if you've been trading these the last 2 or 3 months, there's more to count. There's probably like 20 or 30 at this point. I only could find a list of like the last 10, which we'll go over in a bit. But like, there's a ton of them, and they're popping up so frequently recently. That's all great, but I think understanding the story of how we got here, and then where I think we're possibly headed, if history is any guide, on what that might lead to. So, origin story, the beginning. I am under the opinion that this all started from MSTR. Now, why is that? MSTR is the godfather of what would you call Bitcoin Treasury, right? There's a lot of these crypto treasuries, right? There's a lot of these other small altcoins, or not altcoins, penny stocks that are doing altcoin treasuries, like Solana or a Trump meme coin, right? But it all started from being a Bitcoin treasury play. And MSTR is one of the first companies, or the first company to do that. And they did this back in 2020. I'm not exactly sure where exactly, but they bought, a few dozen million. I think it was like 50 million, 100 million worth of Bitcoin. It obviously had a very powerful run since then. Like once Bitcoin went on a run from, 15, 10K and change all the way up to 60K or 69K. Obviously MSTR had a very insane move. Went from, 15 all the way up to 130. And that's all awesome. But since then, MSTR has massively increased their Bitcoin holdings per share, or Bitcoin holdings in general, and truly have almost ditched, arguably, the original business model that they originally were, and are solely a Bitcoin treasury play. Now, the reason why they've come into more popular light as of recently is because back then in 2021, we were in a bubble market, there was stimulus, there was COVID. Everyone didn't really realize the legitimacy of what they were doing. But they kept doing it. They kept issuing more shares and diluting their stock and buying more Bitcoin and buying more Bitcoin. And throughout this whole bear market of 2022, 2023 here, no one really thought twice about them, right? They're just kind of chopping around, doing their thing, but they're continually buying more Bitcoin. And that's until Bitcoin then comes back. And MSTR is rising, from the ashes, let's call it, above its previous run highs, actually consolidating. And then late last year in 2024, we had an even more massive run from, the 100s, low 100s to as high as 550. And even now we're chilling in the high 300s. So the percent return, or the increase in value that MSTR has done to their company simply by buying and being a treasury holder of Bitcoin has finally caught wind, is finally maybe coming on mainstream. And now they're not the only ones who want to do it. Back in, I think it was April or March, SEAP started the trend as well, right? In April, late April, mid-late April, which is Cantor Fitzgerald SPAC, came out and said, we are also going to be a Bitcoin treasury company. I would argue this is the second right-hand man to be legit as MSTR. They're already going to start out with, I think, like 42,000 Bitcoin in their treasury, which is a lot, right? I think MSTR is like 400,000, but the next best is going to be SEP here with like 47,000 with plans to buy more, okay? So these two are the legit ones so far. The problem is where we cross the line or just, go over the deep end, so to speak, is when now it's not just a legitimate SPAC that's doing it, it's now almost not any penny stock, but a ton of penny stock. Let's just go through some of them. Another one is ASST. I think I would say this is third in line behind being legit. It's backed by some legitimate names of people who are a little more serious about maybe the strategy. But either way, it's one that announced a Bitcoin treasury play, and it goes from 55 cents to as high as $9 in just 2 days. Not only that, it consolidates for a week or two and then goes up to 13. Okay, the opportunity or the upside here in some of these names is insane. Now, granted, it has pulled back and took a chill pill back in the fives, but either way, if you want to be an investor of some of these, which I would caution against, but some of them, you're still up 1,000% on ASST if you were able to get the lows, which again, most people were not or ever will be. So there's that one. But where we get in some of the ones that are more a little bit, I would say the word is sketchy. It's one thing to be a Bitcoin treasury play, but it's another thing to then actually legitimately follow through and find money to do so, right? And a lot of these companies are just promising it or having plans to do it or getting investors to give them money to do it. But what happens after that is the longer term story, which we'll get to in a bit. But KNW, 40 cents to $4. And actually it's quite holding decently well up here. Okay, this is another one. We have another legit one. This actually, I actually lied. I don't think SEAP would be number 2. I think this one would be number 2. MTPLF, Metaplanet, that's based out of Japan, just recently went public on the US markets. They've always been public in the Japanese markets. But this one, I mean, they've been buying Bitcoin for at least a year or two plus now. So that's why I say they were at second, because they were doing it a little bit earlier than maybe SEP was or any of these other ones. But I mean, even this one, $2.50 to as high as 16, and even now it's at 13. I think they own like 10,000 Bitcoin. So again, less Bitcoin than CEP, but they've been doing it a little longer. They've been doing it a little more traditional to exactly how MSTR is doing it. A lot of people call them the MSTR of Japan for that reason. But even this is on a massive, massive move. There's ones like NXTT, another one that went from 27 cents to $4.50, almost high fours, okay? Back down, it's lost quite a bit of its upside moves, back down to the mid ones. Even, you'll recognize this one, GME. GME is one. Now, obviously, it's gone down a lot because they've been diluting, but, you know, they announced their Bitcoin Treasury play here, diluted some more. I think around here is when they actually announced how much Bitcoin they've bought. And then I think they did another offering here to then raise more money to buy more Bitcoin. So oddly, GME is joining the party. There's also NVVE. This one has not done so well, right? This had a pop and then right back to pretty much the lows. So again, not all of them are going to offer these amazing returns. A lot of them if you go into this PRs, which is beyond the scope of this video, but like some have very weird offerings, some have very legitimate ways of doing it, some have just investors. Like there's so many different dynamics of how one company would raise money, and that drastically affects the overall, you know, performance or maybe sustainability of their Bitcoin Treasury acquisition strategy per se. But then we also have like KDLY, right? This one's holding up, or actually this one changed tickers. I'm not sure what it changed tickers to, but anyways, when it announced its treasury of it, I don't even think it was Bitcoin, maybe it was, but either way, $4 to 30, pulled back to 8, and then went back to 30. I mean, the volatility is nuts. SRM, I think, is the most recent one, right? Just a couple days ago, they also have a crypto treasury play. SBET was the first Ethereum treasury play. And so this one gapped up from 4s all the way to 38, believe it or not, spiked to high as 50, pulled back, and then went to 120. I would argue this was just a massive short squeeze, but again, either way, like that's the upside of some of these treasury news ideas. But again, pulled all the way back, did an offering to then actually get money to purchase Ethereum. And so it's kind of pretty much right back down to the lows, if not, you know, maybe you're up 100% if you're still in from the May 23rd here. But again, it's extremely volatile to the upside and downside. Again, shorts involved, momentum involved, and it's kind of hard to tell which ones actually sustainably hold up. But then there's also, what is another one? DFDV.
Ever dreamed of trading like one of the Clovers? Well, it all starts with choosing the right broker. Clover Trading and COBRA have teamed up to supercharge your trading experience. By clicking below, you'll unlock the power of COBRA Prime. We're talking top-tier trading tools, saving you hundreds of dollars. Get ahead with real-time scanners, cutting-edge news, 30 days of commission-free trading, 30 days of free DAS software, 60 days free of Ask Edgar, and so much more. Imagine all that, plus superior short inventory, personalized support, and interest on your idle funds. But it doesn't stop there. COBRA offers competitive pricing on locates and commissions that fit your trading style, with the ability to trade stocks, futures, options, and other products. If you're under the pattern day trading rule, COBRA has a unique solution for you. Venom, a platform designed for traders with smaller accounts to go long or short on small and mid-cap stocks. Ready to elevate your trading game and save big? Click the link below to access exclusive deals only available through Clover Trading and COBRA.
I think this is Solana. I think so. Yeah, back in April, $2 to now 32. And again, this one's actually held up. So I might, after this video, for my own curious reasons, just dig into why this one's holding up better than previous ones. Because clearly, just from a price action standpoint, there's a little more legitimate staying power in this than previous names that I mentioned. I know there's probably at least another 5 or 10 more that I just haven't found, but you get the point. There's the huge trend of companies wanting to acquire and buy specifically Bitcoin, but also some altcoins, right? We have Solana, we have Ethereum. Again, we had one company that did Trump meme coin. I think that collapsed immediately because it's a meme coin, like irrelevant of Trump. If you do meme coins, like the market can sniff that out pretty quickly and like, hey, that's just not a sustainable thing. I think EYEN, if I remember correctly, EYEN literally a day ago or 2 days ago, this move, they're going to do a treasury on Hyperliquid, which I think is like the 11th biggest altcoin in the market or 11th biggest crypto in the market. There was another one that did XRP. You get the point. They're becoming a massive trend. And so what does this actually mean? Well, one is time will tell on which ones are actually legit and sustainable. And one thing to know is, and again, a very early cursor to that, what I think would be price action. Like I said, if you look at DFDV, you can, without even knowing the news, clearly there is someone willing to buy this, and honestly, not even more new buyers, but people aren't willing to necessarily sell this. This is holding its gains versus something like, you know, NVVE, right? That goes right back down. Clearly, there's not some sustaining power. I think Kids was another one too. So Kids, yeah, one that went from 1 to 10 back down. This is about halfway point, so not as holding just as well, but somewhere in the middle there. So again, without even knowing the news or legitimacy of how they're receiving this cash to buy Bitcoin, the staying power, I think, is a big factor of just price action read alone. But one thing I want to caution everyone, and this is where I'm going to maybe be a bit predictive and or forecastive, if that's even a word. What do we get out of this, right? What does this actually mean and lead to? And the one thing I'll caution is back in, and this is chart of Bitcoin, back in 2017, when Bitcoin went on its first huge run. I mean, it had many huge runs, but this was the first run where I think a lot of people actually caught wind of understanding. They may have not have participated in this run, they may have never bought in it, but I think this run was when a lot of people caught eye. I personally didn't know what Bitcoin was until I started seeing it go from 3,000 to 4,000 to 6,000. I actually first bought Bitcoin on this dip towards 6,000. And then, you know, a month or two later, I was up 300% or 200%, thought I was a genius, right? I only had a few $100 at the time. Now I have much more, like, even though the understanding and looking into the technology after so many years. But irrelevant, I specifically remember that this sell-off, right? So we blow off the 20K, we enter a bear market, and we have this massive breakdown under roughly 6K per Bitcoin, right? We have a bottom here, bottom here, bottom here, and then finally we lose that, and we not only break it, but we go drop another 50% from 6K all the way down to the low 3,000s, right? Almost 3,000 exactly, like, yeah, 3,200, 3,100. There was a reason for this pullback. It was not just a technical breakdown. As good as this breakdown was, there was an actual reason for this selling. And a lot of it was forced selling. Because if you know partially why, or part of the run of why this got so hot, was because this was also when Ethereum started getting used for what it is, I think, popularly known for, which is creating a lot of altcoins, right? A lot of altcoins want to create their platform or their technology on Ethereum. These are called ERC20 tokens. They are still very popular today. Many altcoins you probably know or love are ERC20 tokens. They are on the Ethereum blockchain, etc. Again, there's others. There's Solana. There's a few others that are very popular, but Ethereum is still the probably most used, or at least historically most used. And during this run-up, when Bitcoin was going hot, when Ethereum was going nuts, there was what we would call the altcoin craze, right? There was once only Ethereum and Bitcoin, and over the course of 2016, 2017, we started popping up hundreds, if not thousands, of these new altcoins just appearing out of nowhere. Part of the sustainability, or at least the popularity of some of these altcoins, was that they were also putting Ethereum and Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? Like, instead of using cash, they didn't want to use their own altcoin yet per se, because they were still too new. They were still maybe early startup kind of ideas, but they had capital in Ethereum and Bitcoin. But what happens when things get a little rough, right? What happens when your Ethereum or Bitcoin that you owned, that is your capital to use to run your business, is now collapsing 30, 40, 50, 60%, okay? Specifically in Bitcoin, like we said, if we go back, high was 20K, and by the time it broke down of the 6K here, I mean, we're down, what, 60%? 70%? Right? What, 50% would be 10K, 60, yeah, we're down 70% at 6K. What happens when you have all this operating capital in your brain as a new startup altcoin or startup company, and all of a sudden 70% of it just wipes out, and you're on, you know, rents due, employees to pay, technology to do, research and development to pay for, and you can't afford for your capital to keep decreasing in value. Margin calls, liquid selling, forced selling, right? They needed cash, you had the US dollar, whatever currency, whatever actual more stable currency they were looking for at the time, to pay for things. Because again, selling Bitcoin for US dollars in this period was much safer to do. The dollar wasn't going to devalue 50% in a month on your capital, working capital for your company. And so a lot of these altcoin businesses that wanted to and have their altcoins survive had to forcefully sell their Bitcoin and Ethereum. So a lot of companies that were once started up just a year ago in the altcoin market, the reason for the hype was then the reason for the drop. And so I think you know where I'm going with this, which is right now on Bitcoin, we are on, we're still a bull run. We are still very healthily near the highs, relatively only what, less than 10%, 5% off the highs, right? So we're still in this very strong bull market. And again, much more legitimacy now than back in 2017, 2018. There's much bigger institutions that want to buy and hold Bitcoin, hence why all these Bitcoin treasury plays are coming out. But the ones that are less legit, right? The ones that if you are inspired by this video to go digging and find out which ones are actually have some legitimacy and legitimate capital backing them, and which ones are doing offerings or things that are not really sustainable, and arguably the companies are just here for the momentum and aren't really here for the long-term play of buying and treasuring Bitcoin. Again, I have no idea how high Bitcoin goes. It can go another 50K higher. It can go another 50K lower. I have no idea. But when a bear market eventually happens, because we've always seen one happen, right? I imagine at some point this selling will cause and force forced selling from said Bitcoin treasury company or even altcoin treasury companies that once were joining when it was hot and then are going to leave the party when it's not, right? Obviously, that will lead to forced selling of the cryptos and or Bitcoin that they wanted to treasure and hold. There has been some speculation. I have seen some talks that some companies will have their margin calls or their forced selling on the stock. Let's just use one like Kids, for example. I have no idea if Kids is going to do this. Don't quote me on Kids doing this. I'm just using Kids as an example here. Some have speculated that they will buy Bitcoin with the money they've received from their stock price or from their shares that they've sold or investors, etc. And if they ever get in a tight pinch or get margin called or to a point of where they have to forcefully sell something to cover their costs or their business or their loans, whatever it may be, however they've done it, that they will use their stock to do so and not their Bitcoin. That's a little bit wishy-washy, only in my opinion, because why wouldn't have the altcoins done that back here in 2017? If that was the case, why couldn't altcoins that were buying Bitcoin and Ethereum just dilute their own coins as well and save themselves from holding Bitcoin, right? I think there's a conflict of interest there where I think most people are going to be inherently selfish, which is fine. That's what you have to kind of do that and protect yourself when things get rough in some degree. And so I imagine a lot of these Bitcoin treasury companies are going to care more about their stock price than the holdings of Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever altcoin they hold. And so I think some might dilute their stock to stay alive and hold on to their Bitcoin if they truly are about it, like I said, depending on which ones are real and which ones are not, or more legit or more serious about the treasury idea. But the ones who are not are going to sell it just as quickly as they bought it, right? The ones that are here just for the hype, the ones that are here just to buy it because it's the hot new trend, will sell it the moment it's not hot anymore. And so that's going to lead to some forced selling. Now, granted, I don't know in totality how much Bitcoin has been purchased or any altcoins have been purchased in terms of dollar-wise from all of these Bitcoin treasury plays. I'm sure again, hopefully this video inspires someone to go out there and look at every single one that's popped up. Again, there's dozens more than I didn't even mention in this video, but like how much money they've totally bought, total amount of capital in said altcoin, in said Bitcoin, in said Ethereum, and then which ones end up throwing the towel. When things get tough, what's going to happen? And again, I am not saying this is a foolproof thing. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does happen in the next rough time that the crypto space enters, it's not going to shock me, right? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And so I have vividly remembered this because I was so new. I was learning how the crypto market worked and all these dynamics of the market. And this was one of the first forced selling situations I've been aware of. And so it's not the same meal, but it smells very similar, right? So anyways, I'm rambling on. Hopefully this video was informational. Going forward, beyond the maybe forced selling prediction, I'm sure there's going to be more names that pop up. They continually pop up. They continually run. People continually buy them, whether they're legit or not. It's just a hot trend right now. Who knows how long it lasts? So keep your eyes out. I personally, as a short seller, have blacklisted short selling them. Like if you're in the Clover room, I'm like, yeah, I'm not even going to touch them, right? Maybe I should be longing them. I could argue to myself I should be longing them, but like shorting them, haven't even thought about it. Not even going to go there. They're just too volatile. They're too explosive to the upside, too hard to time when the downside actually happens, in my opinion, at least in my experience. Just let them do their thing, grab the popcorn, watch them happen, have some fun and some entertainment, and just see where it goes from here. So anyways, guys, thanks so much. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.